I really wanted to coach women back to business because I realized how difficult it was for many young women after having a child to come back with a certain self-confidence at work. I wasn't making money, and I realized very quickly that with coaching only, individual coaching only, B2C, I was not going to make a decent revenue. You need to be curious, test things out. If it's not working, it's not a problem. You will learn a lot and you will be able to twist your message.
Mhm. I'll make it as a coach, light the spark inside, empower every soul to turn the tide. I'll make it as a coach, help others grow, changing lives with every story I know. Welcome to the Making of a Coach, where we unpack how coaches manage to turn a passion into their profession. I'm Toby, co-founder of MetaFox Coaching Tools, and today I am meeting Hélène Feuillat. Hélène runs a leadership training business in Brussels and coaches leaders one-on-one. Also this time we started our conversation with a picture card warm-up. I asked Hélène to pick a picture that describes her coaching journey. Out of 52 different cards, she chose a photo of Russian dolls. Very colorful wooden figures standing in a row. You can see the photo that she chose on our episode cover as well as on the video. So let's get started and hear from Hélène.
Fantastic. Oh my God, there are so many images that are speaking. Well, you know what? If I have to choose one, I would choose the Russian dolls.
Awesome. How does that represent your journey as a coach?
I became a coach while I already had a previous professional experience. So there has been some transformation. And what I like about the symbolic of the Russian dolls is also the fact of every moment in my life, I grew closer to who I am, if I can say it this way. And so not only this is something that I have experienced myself, I think it is also something that I am contributing as a coach. It is to bring others also closer to themselves. That's why I chose it. It's very colorful. I think my professional path and personal path as well has been very colorful. And sometimes also I wonder how many little voices there are in my head with all the thousands ideas that I have. So this picture is actually quite me, if I can say so.
Mm-hmm. Great. You grew up in Belgium and your mother tongue, it sounds French, but you said you actually grew up in Flanders. So in the Flemish part, your husband is Portuguese. You've lived in Japan, India, Thailand. So how did that super multicultural background also influence you?
I'm sure it has. First of all, we say that travel contributes to seeing the world differently and really see how people live on a daily basis is very different than traveling into a country as a tourist, right? So being able to be close to the people from completely different cultures and also adapt. And I found this always very interesting. How was it that I could connect with people, although I wasn't understanding a word they were saying? When I was in Japan, I was working in an office in the center of the city, but I was living 1.5 hours outside the city in the dormitory for girls from the Nissan company. So to go to the office was quite an adventure. And I had this girl who was working in the same office as me. She wasn't speaking a word of English, and she would take me by the hand every morning to bring me to the metro station, and we would go on the train together. And it was just fabulous. So this cultural diversity is something that I won't be able to get rid of. And I obviously don't want to.
Yeah. Can you take us with you on this timeline?
Oh my God, it was in 93. 93 is quite a long time ago, without WhatsApp, without internet, without having this huge touristic enthusiasm for Asia. I was sent to Japan by my new job. It was in events management. And so I was supposed to manage a congress, which would be organized in Japan with public private partnerships. And I think I was naive and looking at life from the most enthusiastic perspective. So everything seemed an adventure. I don't know whether you know Pippi Longstockings. She has this great quote that I like, and it is, I've never done it before, so I think I can do it. And it was, I think, a little bit my mindset. It wasn't easy every day, but every day was a new day, right? So this definitely helped as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess today we would call it growth mindset, this Pippi Longstockings attitude of, I have never done it, so I know I can do it. Is that something that you always had, or would you say that's also a bit developed?
I think it has developed, although, the nature nurture, probably there was already some nature, but definitely I think it has been nurtured. I came from a quite strict education with a lot of rules. And I'm the middle of two brothers. And my oldest brother was, I'd say, more intellectual, reasonable, obedient. So you can already imagine, Toby, I came just after that, and I was the opposite, right? I was not obedient. I was testing my parents as all the ways I could. I think it was a way for me to differentiate myself from my brother, probably.
And is that something that you would say you can also see in clients today, a dimension that you think about, this nature nurture of growth mindset and this drive for learning?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I can tell you that most of the people who do not have a growth mindset, they will most probably not get into a coaching adventure unless they're forced to. And we know that if someone is forced into coaching, it is not going to work, right? You need to be open. It doesn't need to have all the answers or the full plan, but you need to be somehow committed for changing. And the first coaching mission is maybe to bring the people to that level of awareness before really more in-depth work can be done. I think it's great to see some people who were, let's say, more in a sleeping mode, waking up and suddenly seeing their reality from a different perspective. I think that's the first step towards transformation is awareness.
First, realizing I could change. Secondly, I want to change.
Yes.
And then do it. Let's go back a bit into your biography and into your journey.
I went to school in the European school, and European schools are usually open for children whose parents work for a European institution, which was not the case of my parents, but somehow there was a European school not very far from my house. And so we were, under certain conditions, allowed to attend that school. And so this European dream is something that you get really on a daily basis at a European school, right? And it's really about the strengths of Europe. And so me arriving in this European organization, there was a lot of things I could already recognize in that organization. And I could really relate on experiences I had done in the past. So having this job was for me like I was pinching myself. It was absolutely fantastic. I could hear all the languages that were there. There were Germans, Belgians, Italians, Spanish. It was absolutely amazing. So I worked there for about 10 years. I was in the right system. And content-wise, I'd say more than 80% of the things I was doing were great. So I was traveling a lot. I had contacts with important stakeholders. I had fun. So yeah, it was amazing. What made me actually leave was more some conditions that might have inspired me for my coaching business actually. When I became pregnant of my first child, I was the first woman then working in that organization who was pregnant and who was going to be a mother.
Mm.
Yeah. The majority of my colleagues were men, and the girls that were working with me or women either had no children or no children yet. So I was a little bit, it was a little bit like a test. And at some point, I think I didn't feel the recognition that I deserved. I had the impression that I was put a little bit, not on a sidetrack, but that I received these messages that I was supposed to take care of my family first, right? And that it's great to have ambitions, but why don't you take care of your family first? And I disagreed. It's not that I didn't want to take care of my family, but I also wanted to take care of my career. So at some point, I decided to leave. And I think it was a great decision. I think my time was up there and I was ready for something different and something new.
Mm. This experience of having to slow down her career due to pregnancy was very influential for Helen's first coaching business. With Back to Business, her first brand, she turned this own experience into her mission. But before we get there, there's one more stop in Helen's making of story and one key ingredient that helped her to build a coaching business.
There is one important thing that I think characterizes me and it helps me today in developing also my business is that I've always been a very good networker, right? And already at that period of time, I was very good in remaining in touch with people without necessarily needing anything from them. And so when I decided to leave this European organization, I was starting to look where was going to be my next step. We moved house actually during that period. We bought a house in Brussels, and close to that house was the head office of Toyota Motor Europe. And this European organization I was working for was into transport telematics. So I thought, okay, there is a link. Why not work for Toyota? It is next to my house. And then I started thinking, who do I know at Toyota? And then a name popped up and I sent a message. And this person said, you know what? I'm happening to be the vice president of the Department of Product Communication and Events, and we are looking for someone. Why don't you come over and have a coffee? So I went there for a coffee, and a week later I started. And after, I don't know, like 2-3 months, I basically know everyone. People ask me, how long have you been here? How many years have you been here? I said, well, I've actually been here only 3 months. They could not believe it. So I knew quite quickly who to talk to, who was doing what. Because of the job, it was in PR. We were also discussing with a lot of internal and external stakeholders. It was really a job for me. I knew nothing about cars, but it didn't matter. I knew everything about events. I had a great team and a great boss, an Italian boss, Fabio. So I was again in events. And after the first year, my boss asked me on end of the year evaluation. And he said, Helen, with his Italian accent, he said, Helen, where do you see yourself within the organization? Because at Toyota, it was really the tradition and the culture to do a lot of internal rotations. I said, Fabio, cars, I'm really not interested. I don't see myself anywhere else than where I am. And he said something very interesting at that time that I will never forget. And I have thanked him for that afterwards, years after. He said to me, wow, that's so obvious. Well, I see you somewhere that is so obvious. I said, well, yes, where do you see me then? And he said, in training. I said, okay. I had no clue. And it's only a couple of years later that indeed I started with coaching and training, because I forgot about that idea. It went somewhere in the back of my head. But afterwards, with some reflection, I remembered that it was also coming from him.
Hmm.
We don't meet people by chance, right? They all have somehow a message to convey. And I think he was important. This person was important in seeing something in me that I did not see at that time.
And now looking back, you can connect the dots.
Exactly. And then actually things started to go a bit faster. I worked for a Belgian company for a couple of months, and suddenly I woke up with an idea, and it is to coach women back to business. I woke up and I said to my husband, I have an idea. And he went, oh my God. So over summer, I started digging into that idea and check, okay, how am I going to make this work? And I really wanted to coach women back to business because I realized how difficult it was for many young women after having a child to come back with a certain self-confidence at work. So it was very common for Belgians to come back to work after 3 months. And then you hear that you've been replaced and that you should not worry because they found someone wonderful to replace you. Well, how does that feel? And so even before I started my coaching training, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I found someone through internet in Australia who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And I sent her a message and we had a Skype call and she explained me what she was doing. And I thought, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do. And so I thanked this person also for her time. And then I started my coaching training.
Yeah, there's two interesting things I see here. So at first, you say you started with a very clear niche in mind, actually, which is something I think many coaches or also entrepreneurs struggle with, having to say no to a certain group of clients or group of customers. And you came kind of from the other direction with also having a societal mission, helping coach women back to business. That's I also like the alliteration, back to business. And then also the international role model. So there was already someone else who has done what you want to do. And I think one key conversation I had when starting this podcast was also a friend who asked, is there an American role model podcast that you can mimic, that you can take inspiration from? And at that point, I didn't have that. But then I started thinking, let me actually dig in and do some research. Who is doing what we have in mind? And that also helped me a lot to not exactly do what they do, but then also draw inspiration and become more clear about the vision for the service, for the product. It sounds like these two elements also, I can see them very clearly.
Absolutely. And, there is one very important word that you've been using already a couple of times, I think, since our conversation started. It's about inspiration, right? And it's to get inspiration elsewhere and then make it your own thing. I have this belief that there is enough room for everyone on this planet. And this is a message to all the coaches and future coaches that are listening to us. There is room for everyone, right? Everyone who wants to do things seriously. Yeah? And who really want to have a mission about, helping others. So I think it's very important to get inspiration elsewhere. And it helps our own thinking path. We don't need to have the most a uniqueness of an idea. We can inspire ourselves from something that is already existing. Then it's about owning it.
There's actually one other thing that I found interesting when researching about you and your brand. It's this with Hélène. What is it about this with that seems to play a strong role in what you're doing?
With plays a very strong role. You must know that when I started my activity back to business, that was how it was called. But in 2008, I very clearly understood that the economical environment that I was in Belgium wasn't really jumping from excitement about the project. Today, it's very different, obviously. So I also realized I needed, if I wanted to make a living, that I could not focus my activities only on women. I was invited by someone who was actually looking for a partner into the training and coaching business. And so we decided to work together, and we chose a common name. And we worked together for quite a number of years. But at some point, I was having the impression I was hiding behind this name. And maybe before I was lacking credibility. So I think it was in like 2018 where I realized actually I wanted to be, I call it free. No one had imprisoned me before, right? It was more my own way of looking at my reality then. And so I thought, okay, I am mature enough and maybe competent enough to be in the world under my own name without having to hide behind anyone or anything. And the width comes from this very, I find, collaborative energy of the width. It is not the this or that, it's this with this. It is a little bit of this with a little bit of this. No, it is how we spice up a dish. I'm not sure what your favorite dish is.
There's plenty. Let's say pizza.
Pizza, right? Well, the question is, what would you add on your pizza to make it even better, right? Do you ask for extra cheese? Do you ask for this hot sauce? What is it that you put on it to spice it up? It is with something. So this with became really important for me because I see the world in combining, not in dissociating, but in combining. And so this word became really, my identity.
Yeah. What I also like about it is this collaborative aspect of it. So it is also, let's say, a coaching journey or also a training is not delivered by you, but it is a collaborative process where the coach, where the client actually takes responsibility for their own change. And it's not you who can just make it happen like that.
Yes.
And that's in fact also something, if I look back at the first flip charts that I prepared in this organization where I became a trainer, we had this habit of creating these fancy title flip charts. And then in the very first ones, I always wrote meeting facilitation by Toby. And then, I don't know, I think 1 year in, I changed that to with Toby also. So, and for me, that was also this realization, well, I'm just in engineering, we would say no, I'm missing the word. The activator, basically
Initiator, activator, proposer, messenger. I call this partnership. And it's what I say to my clients today, mainly in all my training missions. I do not come to deliver half a day of a workshop and then I'm gone. I'm not interested. I only go for partnership missions. Right? First, there needs to be a clear goal. I need to be aligned with that mission, right? And I want to work midterm, long-term together. I am not interested to do a hop on, hop off bus like you see in the majority of the capitals and big cities. Not interested. I want to make, a difference. And this difference, I think, but there might be other ways of making a difference, right? But I think I make my difference best when I am partnering with my clients.
Nice. The power of with. Yeah. But if I understand correctly, this was then already sort of your second brand as a coach. Let's go back to number one, your first coaching education, starting with back to business. Your first session, maybe your first training. How were these early days for you?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. What I did, though, is I resigned and I started my coaching training without having a job. I did some freelance event management just to have some income, because my husband said it was all great and well to do what you love and find your passion and a mission. But he said that he was not going to sponsor me. And at that time, I was quite upset because I found him not very supportive. But probably he did what was best because he made sure that I would make this work. So I resigned in October and I started my coaching training in October. And there, every coaching day that I went to, I was like a little child in front of a Christmas tree. It was incredible. And on the other hand, it was a bit scary because I realized how incompetent I was. I thought I could listen well. I realized I could not listen. I thought I could ask questions. I realized I could not ask open questions. I thought I could, show empathy. I realized I was not that empathic. So it was confronting. And on the other hand, it was absolutely amazing. I have incredible memories of that moment and of that period, which lasted like a small year. Well, of course, not full time. It was like a couple of days per month. And then we also had some work to do in between. I still have very close friends that I made during this period. So it was amazing, really.
Hmm. Was it a certain type of coaching education, like a certain framework?
No, it was really a mix. You had NLP, you had transactional analysis, we had some other tools. So it was a little bit of everything. That's actually what I also liked. I also liked the fact that not every module was given by the same trainer, which gives you then also a little bit of a feel of what kind of trainer I also wanted to be. Although at that period, I had no clue I was going to become a trainer. I was really more into coaching in my mind. It was quite generalistic, which I would actually recommend because the coaching training is never finished. My biggest challenge is actually to pick one training a year. Otherwise, I would myself be constantly in training. So there is plenty of opportunities afterwards to deep dive into the tools that speak most to one person.
And I see you have a very long list of frameworks and types of educations. Let's get there in a minute, but I would like to still dig a bit more into your start as a coaching business. You wanted to become a coach. You also became a trainer. Where were your first clients come from?
I realized that our brain recognizes what it knows, right? It's the power of attention. I had my project. I started in October 2008, and a couple of months later, like end of the year, early 2009, I was in my car, stuck in traffic, and I saw this ad on a tram halt. And it was a sports coach who was a famous tennis sports coach, famous in Belgium. And he was looking at me in the eyes, the paper guy, obviously, not the real person. He was looking to me in the eyes, and it was written, "Are you the next business personality of the year?" And it was sponsored by Toyota. I thought, you are talking to the right person. So I went online to have a look. What was this business personality thing? I registered. I had my project. It was about having a project. And it's about living your project and being the personality that was required to make this project work. So I went through the different steps. I eventually ended up with the 11 other finalists. We went on this long weekend where we had all kinds of tests and presentations and conversations about our project and how we wanted to present it to the world. I met fantastic people. And then I won a car. I won a Toyota, but I already had my car. So I sold it, Toby. And so I had some money. And so the pressure went poof. And not only did I have then some income, I also received, Belgium is a very small country and a very small world, right? So I had press visibility. And so I started to get phone calls. I was asked by a women's clinic who was going to open whether I was interested in having a coaching practice there, together with psychologists who looked at me like, what is this coach going to do here? But actually, I had a conversation with the director of this women's clinic, and he was a gynecologist. And he saw how many young women were really needing help he could not provide to them. And he was sending them on therapy. Well, actually, they needed something different. So it all made sense.
Mhm.
Then
Yeah,
in terms
very,
of,
very interesting.
yes, so but again, had I not seen this paper commercial, my life would have been different. So I think it's very important to believe in the power of attention, to clean your glasses, and to look what is right under your nose.
Yeah.
No need to go to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley, or God knows what, to come with the most fantastic idea or the most fantastic plan. It is very often under our nose.
Mhm. Yeah, with this mission, partnering with a gynecologist, it's totally obvious and also so not obvious at the same time in a way, because he's in a different area of that problem space, but in a way dealing with the same people who have the problem that you are
Exactly.
helping solve.
Exactly. And he was smart enough to recognize that I had something I could bring that he could not bring. And as this person was the one who was selecting which professionals were going to be able to have their practice in that woman clinic, and it was a really famous hospital in Brussels, it gave me the credibility. So I made my business cards and I could write that I was certified or approved by this clinic to be able to work there, which was a huge thing for me, right? In terms of credibility and feeling legitimate, it was really important.
Yeah. And that program, it sounded a bit like a business incubator program, but then also a bit like a competition that through winning, you got the attention. I imagine in order to win that competition, you also already had quite a clear-cut vision and a way to present your vision and your business, right? How did you get that?
First of all, I went there a little bit like Pippi Longstockings. I had nothing to lose. I thought it was going to be great. I was going in any case to meet nice people. It was in a beautiful environment. There was nothing to lose. So I went already with that spirit. But indeed, my project was already very, very clear. And on top of that, it was new. There was no one coaching women specifically. No one.
Yeah, so you were new, you were the first one in Belgium. At the same time, you had the role model from Australia, as we noted earlier. And partnering with that clinic, it sounds to me like you started actually with individual women. So
Yes.
B2C clients. How was that? Did you actually make money with those individual women?
I didn't make money at that time. I probably lost some money because I had to get to the clinic. It was in an expensive area. I got lots of parking fines. I also had to pay the rental of my office. So no, I was definitely not making money, but I was making experience, right? I do have to apologize to my first clients because I did the best I could. And definitely my coaching skills then were not what they are today, but you have to start somewhere. Now, as it was a new topic, I think people were more inclined to come and test it out. They were paying, I remember my price was 60 euros. Yes, at that time, which was not cheap, you know? But again, I think every hour needs to be rewarded. So I did not start coaching for free or for, you give me whatever you want. No, that was my price. So no, I wasn't making money. And I realized very quickly that with coaching only, individual coaching only, B2C, I was not going to make a decent revenue. That is why I think also, I'm sure, that when someone came to me about partnering for training, that I thought, yes, this makes sense. And that's when you ask me also, how did I make my first corporate clients? Actually, it was working with this other person who had already a lot of experience. And I was bringing the Flemish side of things. She needed a bilingual person. She was ready to train me. So I was very fortunate to have her as a mentor. And I started to talk to my network, sports network, friends. And that's how I got my first missions. It was one, people knew who I was. They knew that I was serious in what I was doing. And they also knew I was partnering with someone who had already over 10 years of experience in the training business.
Mhm.
So it's a combination.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I hear is, so there's this growth mindset, courage attitude. There is then getting the first experience in B2C individual coaching. And then there is a partnership that gets you, on the one hand, to training, on the other, also to bigger business clients.
Yes.
And in that partnership, you could bring this hard skill that actually hasn't anything to do with coaching, of speaking another language, speaking Dutch, I guess,
Yes.
that also brought value into the partnership with a more experienced person.
Yes. And this person also was very much, Belgian profile. I had a very international profile. She was a psychologist, but had never worked really in the corporate world, which I had. So we had a lot of complementarities. Yeah. But it was great. And that's why for 10 years, almost 9 years, we were both very successful.
Nice. Okay. And this is when you really started making money and be able to live from coaching and training now at this point. How was the split back then? How is it today?
So here we're looking at early 2010. It was, I'd say, 85% training and 15% coaching. And the coaching was mainly people who were paying for their coaching session from their own pocket, right? Which I'm not doing anymore, or hardly. Today, it's more about 50-50. And the coaching that I do is coaching that it's individual coaching financed by the companies, and they encourage their managers and individual contributors to get coached. So that's great because it's a different price. You cannot ask someone, well, I cannot ask someone to pay for a coaching session. I cannot ask the same price for a company than for an individual. So it's a very different story.
Mhm. What's the price if you ask a company?
The company, it turns around 300 euros for a session, but actually I am not selling per hour, I'm selling per package.
Mhm.
And in the package, it's obviously the time for the coaching, but it's also preparation. It's also availability in between coaching sessions. It is also some tools that I'm reaching out, and it's all the experience also that I have. So I think it's not a right way of thinking in hours. I think you should think in value.
Mhm. And I'm wondering, I don't see that on your website, do I? So how do you communicate to a business about this offering?
They know and they contact me. And, I don't do any prospection. Actually, for coaching, my best clients come through training, in the sense that whenever we train or I train within an organization, every participant is a potential future coachee or would recommend me to one of her team members or colleagues.
Mhm.
So that's why I think also being a trainer and a coach is a great commercial combination, because the two are different, although linked. And once you are within an organization, you can provide both. If I look back at the last years, I think the pandemic has very much influenced my reality today. Doing individual coaching online has becoming the norm.
Mhm.
Although I still have an office in Brussels that I love, where my clients can come for their coaching sessions, even those who are living or working in Brussels often do it virtually because of traffic, waste of time, and so on and so on. So this has really increased the possibilities of coaching sessions, because I spend my time between Brussels and Lisbon. So every time I'm in Lisbon, I am actually doing my online coaching sessions. While when I'm in Brussels, I'm mainly in trainings, whether it's in Belgium, the Netherlands, or France, which are my three big markets. So that's a little bit how the split happens.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I think that sounds like a great place to be in. But let's assume you weren't and you were a new coach starting out today. What would be your recommendation for them?
I think it's important to know what differentiates you. So again, as I said, you don't need like this revolutionary idea, but you need to know your added value. Yeah. And one of the added values I have in Belgium that makes a lot of sense, it is the fact of being able to give a training in French, in Flemish, in English, and even mix it all together. Right? This is also one of my big added values. Right? So you need to know your added value. You need to know the topics that you are really passionate about. I would definitely not recommend anyone to give a training on something that he or she doesn't like, because you don't do it well. And in training, you have only one chance. No one will take you back if your training was perceived as bad quality. Learning managers do not want to take the chance of themselves getting bad feedback. So you need to be sure of what you want to offer. So I think the topic needs to be very clear. You need also to check upon your credibility, and credibility is, also not only, but also a perception. Your topic needs to make sense. I'm mentoring coaches, and for example, I have one coach who is academically a psychologist. When she talks about burnout and stress and mental resilience, it makes absolutely sense with her academical background, right? So you need to have some kind of a link, whether it's experience, whether it's academical references. It's not reading one good book, right? That's not enough. I think it's important to know first, do you want to work in the corporate environment? Yeah. Do you like to work in the corporate environment? Some people had such a bad experience themselves in a corporate environment that they still feel sick every time they push the door of a big company. Well, then it's maybe not the right environment for you, right? So I think it's very important to choose that environment. Also, to talk to people, but don't talk only to your first circle of friends. These are not the people who are going to get you a contract. They don't want to, mess with your friendship. So they might be ambassadors, but they will not be contractors. You need to look further at people that you know a bit, but who will take the risk of hiring you. Does that sound logical?
Yeah, that sounds very logic. So I hear clarity, I hear authenticity, I hear competence. And I think maybe this knowledge I can iterate and I can change is maybe then what also helps you to be clear. Because what I often see in myself, but also in other coaches I get to talk to, is this, yeah, I want to do this and that and everything because I find this framework great and also that. And I want to work with these clients, but also with those. And I think oftentimes that doesn't help with the clarity. And yes, maybe it is also authentic to have many faces in a way, but it's not clear. And I think what I always then say, well, you cannot live many lives in parallel, but maybe you can live many lives iteratively. So one after the other, and you can be the guy, the girl for X, and then later also be the girl for Y. And in that way, have this clarity. And I think that is what I hear a bit also, and what I heard earlier with the back to business offering. How did you get your first corporate client with that?
I think one of the first official, after my coaching certification, the first official certification I went for was MBTI. My colleague was certified in MBTI. It's through her that I learned about MBTI. I was following her, shadowing her and the training that she was giving. And I fell in love with MBTI. So I went to certify myself in MBTI.
Mm-hmm.
So I started speaking MBTI all over the place to all my friends, all my network, like my sports activities at school, the parents of my children. And it resonated to some. They heard about it before, or they were implementing MBTI within their organization. So they asked us to come and to deliver their MBTI trainings. And from one point comes the other. And MBTI was very hot. Today, MBTI is a little less hot. We see some waves. Now it's more insights. I'm not insights certified. I will not do it because I prefer MBTI. So I think sometimes you need to focus and choose. But that's how it started.
Nice, yeah. So a trained psychologist that likes MBTI, I don't come across that often in terms of your partner, right? If you say she was doing that first.
Yes.
And then this was one of your first tools that you applied to organizational problems. And what I'm wondering there is, what were clients interested in? Was it, you do MBTI, that's interesting? Or did they come with, we have this team dynamic problem, or we need a team building? Did they come from the problem space, or were they actually interested in the solution?
I think it really depends. I think it depends on, the awareness of the HR manager or the learning and development manager at the time. There were definitely a bit of both. I'd say learning managers were definitely more aware of, for example, MBTI, while team managers realized there was a problem in their team. Now, what I always advise learning managers and HR managers to do within their organization is to stick with one tool. You need to be serious, and it doesn't make sense to go from DISC to Insights to MBTI, then to DISC again, then Lumina, then Enneagram, and so on. I think it's important to be a little bit consistent. And I have no problem if someone is telling me, in our organization, we use Insights and that's it. I say, that's fine. But I know the tool enough to be able to show them the limits of the tool. And that's where I can come with something extra that will not be a competitive tool, that would be an addition. So I think it's very important, if you are not certified to a certain tool, that you still know enough to know the benefits of it, but also the disadvantages. And then to come with a suggestion that can be added to the tool that they are already using. Because it doesn't make any sense if I come to an HR manager and say, you know what, I don't believe in Insights. I'm an MBTI fan, and you're using Insights. Really? Why aren't you changing? They might have used this for the last 10 years. Everyone has its profile. It doesn't make any sense. I would probably say then, well, you have done your Insights. It might be worthwhile to do a little refresh and to put the thing together, and everyone comes with its Insights report. Let's put the things on the table and see do we see that we are not communicating well enough? What does it have to do with? Is it because there is too much of red energy? Has it to do with assertiveness? Has it to do with maybe cultural differences? Let's see this from a different perspective and take what you have already. So this is about what I encourage every time my clients to do, is to come with what they have so far.
And this loyalty to one model within an organization, that has the benefit of developing a common language. Everybody means the same thing, hopefully, if they speak of extroversion, introversion, or things like these. Or why would you say have one model and stick to it, at least for as a basis?
Yes, I think it's a common language thing. It's also, a budget thing. Once they have already trained a certain number of the population in one tool, if they choose another tool, everyone will have to do it all over. So the chances that they say yes will in any case be small. So another advice to all the trainers and coaches out there is really to know already to ask the questions about what kind of tools are you currently using? Since when are you using these tools? How happy are you with the results that these tools are provided? What is missing with these tools? If there is one extra thing that I could provide, what would it be? Right? So ask questions without coming straight with your own idea of the magic tool that you love. It's not because you love it that your client will love it.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. You said earlier you started with MBTI and also kind of that every year you add another education to your toolbox. And I've seen, there's MBTI, there's Belbin team roles, there's Lego Serious Play, there's the Toltec way, there's ontology. Which of these are you using most frequently today and why?
It's very hard to pick it out just like that. I'd say the one that I love to use, but practically I might not use it as often as I would like, is Lego Serious Play, in the sense that it requires, a setup. It requires a certain budget. So it is a way of bringing the link of head-hand, the unconscious to the conscious. It requires a certain setting. The others I use either consciously or in the back of my head. So I might use some of the tools without the client knowing it. It's a kind of a backbone in the questioning that I use in coachings, for example. I like Belbin. And why? Because it's also behavioral compared to an MBTI or an Insights where you more go on personality. And where you might have this shortcut of excuses about, but I have no blue in my profile, so I'm not going to do it. While in Belbin, it's in every team. These 9 roles need to be covered whether you like it or not. I'm alone in my business. I need to cover these 9 roles, and some I love and some I don't like. So there is really something more about, I'd say, ownership and responsibility that I really like. Also, it's easy enough to be explained without having really a full questionnaire to fill out. So it's also a tool or a model that I can use without adding extra costs to my own daily fee.
Because oftentimes it's the client who then needs to pay for the MBTI certification fee.
But the fees for all these trainings, for going to these trainings, it's expensive. So you need somehow to make sure that you can get some money out of your trainings because you will need to reimburse it. But MBTI, once you are MBTI certified, you don't need to pay any additional annual fee like you, for example, have with Insights.
Yeah. And how expensive is it for the client?
If I use Belbin, for example, and the client doesn't have a lot of budget to go through all the tests and so on, the only thing they will need to pay is my daily fee. And my daily fee turns around 2,000, 2,500 euros exclusive VAT. There is a little bit of material to be printed out. That's it. If there is the need for completing, for example, an MBTI questionnaire, these are prices that need to be added to the daily fee. So it's a question of budget.
Yeah, I see. And for the Belbin team roles example that you just gave, you said, okay, it's a 2.5K for a 1-day training, I assume, with a group. And in this training, then they wouldn't do any tests that would require extra fees from Belbin, but it's just you using the framework with the clients.
And that's fine. Absolutely. Yeah. I am Belbin certified. I can use the model without any problem. There is no obligation of using the questionnaire.
Mhm.
Like for MBTI is the same. I can do an MBTI training without using the questionnaire because the questionnaire, is only a support. And the result is the way we answer to questions on a certain day. It's not the truth. It's an indication for the truth. So the most important is still the training, the debrief, and the presentation of the tools and how it resonates with all the participants so that they can choose.
Yeah. So they are put into a role play. They can observe themselves. How do I feel in certain situations? How do I take decisions in certain situations? And then I can also judge what type am I.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a role play because it's really about being themselves.
Mhm.
It's more with the questions and the exercises that we do that I ask them to identify how clearly it is for them that they have a preference, for example, extrovert versus introvert.
Mhm.
And often they are in the middle. That's fine. It is clarity. And it might not be very clear to me what my natural preference is. So that's why I really like MBTI because there is this nuance. If you really dig into the depth of the tool and if you don't stay on the surface where you think your profile is made out of 4 letters, it's not true. There is so much more behind it. But again, if you want to get that knowledge, you need time. And so it doesn't make any sense to build an MBTI workshop in half a day and hope that the people will get it. They won't. Yeah.
Mhm. Because they need a full day, you think.
They need more than a full day. For an MBTI, if you really want to do it well, you need at least 2 days.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
problematic because people don't have 2 days and they don't have the money for 2 days. But honestly, if you want to do it well, yeah, that's really what I encourage. I'd encourage people to go for good instead of fast, right? If people say, oh no, I want a 2-hour workshop on MBTI, then I say, well, then it's not going to be with me.
Mhm.
And that's
And,
okay.
and where do you compromise? What is the smallest package that I can get?
For MBTI, well, I'm going to give actually one soon. So I first have an introduction of 1.5 hours. This happens virtually, where I explain what MBTI is about and how, in which mindset you need to put yourself when you complete a questionnaire, right? Otherwise, the risk is that people complete a questionnaire unconsciously, the way they would like to be, or the way they think their boss wants them to be. No, so I give them this 1.5 hours. Then we have one full day. In between, they fill out their questionnaire and they don't have the answers yet. And then we have one more half a day. And then we see after this introduction, one full day, one half a day, if it's enough or if we need to take it further.
Mhm.
And this is with a team of 6 persons.
Mhm. I see. And let's say we are in a workshop like this now, and I want to find out. We talked about introversion and extroversion. I think another dimension of MBTI is thinking versus feeling. How do you take decisions?
Mhm.
And you said earlier it's not role plays. Can you take me into an exercise that would help with like deciding for that preference, thinking versus feeling?
There are so many exercises. One typically is, okay, well, your best friend's house has been robbed. Okay. So write down all the questions you would ask this person. Then we ask and people write down. And we see, and again, this is not the only indicator. It is just, to give you some insights. We see some people who straight go about, I hope you're not hurt. I hope you're okay. Do you want me to come over? While others would say, how much has been stolen? Have you contacted the insurance company? Has the police come? And these are much more objective, factual elements that are important too. One is not better than the other. So you have plenty of exercises during the coaching or during the MBTI training, certification training. They provide us with tons of exercises that we can test out with the teams. That's why it's so important to do these certification trainings, because otherwise you are only with the theory. This you can do it by reading a good book. But if you go to these certification trainings, they give you also lots of exercises that you can do with your future teams.
Hmm.
So
And
what would you do? Huh? If your best friend got robbed. What is the first question that pops to your mind?
Yeah, it's a good one. I did extensive MBTI training also in 2014, 10 years ago. And back then I was thinking and I would ask, yeah, what was stolen? What can you do? Is there insurance? And I think MBTI was also the framework that showed me, I have this preference, but there's also this other side. I don't have to, in terms of introversion, extroversion, it was also this, oh, wow, so this is how other people recharge their batteries. I had no idea. And I have the feeling over time, back then I was an ENTJ, so extroverted and thinking. And last time I did the test, there's also 16 personalities, which I would like to ask you about in a minute. And last time I took it, I was actually ENFJ. So I changed from thinking to feeling. But yeah, I think in neither case, I think in terms of thinking versus feeling, I'm sort of in the middle. And it's probably also a bit depending on the relationship, on my shape in that day. If I may say that. Is that a valid thing to say in MBTI?
No. You can say it. What I would encourage you to do is one day do the MBTI step 2. I don't know if you're aware of the step 2. It's very interesting because every letter has 5 what they call facets. And in these facets, there it's about quantity. Because if we go in the essence of MBTI, your profile should not change. But what happens is when you get older and wiser, it's the width, and there is a better combination. And what I see today in the facets, I am clearly still an extroverted preference profile, but in my facets, I have many more introverted facets than I had in the past. The first time I did an MBTI step 2, all my extroverted facets were at the maximum. I was already tired just by looking at my profile. And now I do things in a much more gentle, introverted way. I go alone to the restaurant, no problem. I need my quiet time, no problem. I am actually much more comfortable with silence. I wasn't 10 years ago. I didn't become an I, but I better understood the benefits of it, and I am combining it better. It's again the nature-nurture thing. So, if you want an MBTI step 2, I'm certified. I can suggest.
Thanks for the
Doing
offer.
some business here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. For me, it has been, as I said, very, very transformational, the model. So you're saying my preference in this case for extroversion, introversion stays the same, but it is sort of the flexibility in behavior that I got.
Yes, and it's how it blends together in your own reality, right? So how have you been able to incorporate the opposite? And that's how we grow. We don't grow by continuing being, our selfish self. We grow by incorporating what we need and did not want to see, right? So the complementarity comes also within us, not only with our interactions with others. So that's what I call completeness. It is about, instead of being very domical and thinking either E or I, it's okay, I know this, the exercise of the hands that you probably had on your first MBTI training. Right hand, left hand. We have 2 hands, but with which hand will I prefer to write? It doesn't mean that the other hand is cut from my body. I still have it. Am I going to use it or not? And how, right?
Yeah, I love that. So MBTI is about discovering that you also have a left or a right hand. Yeah, very nice. And so let's say I'm a new coach. I can sort of follow the conversation that Helen and Toby are having, but I don't really know much about MBTI. Where can I start? And what do you think about like free tests like the 16personalities.com?
Obviously, I'm not a fan. I'm not using it. So there's not much I can say. I think it's important to use tools that are, I find, certified. I'm not saying that it's not going to be a help, but again, it is not the test that it's interesting. And by the way, in MBTI, we don't talk about tests, we talk about a questionnaire, right?
Mhm.
And it's not so much a questionnaire that counts, it is the debrief. So I find it very dangerous for people to do these little tests online and then think, I am this or I am that. It's too easy. That's not how it works. So you become more, I'd say, blind than clear. So that's why I wouldn't encourage it. Or if you do it, it would be a support to have a conversation afterwards with your coach, your therapist, to have some kind of a start of, where do we begin with this conversation? But definitely don't believe the results of any kind of test or questionnaire.
Mm. It's only an aid for the
It's
journey
only
in the training and coaching and
exactly,
the reflection process.
exactly.
And how about, okay, so you say go to the MBTI official organization, get certified there.
I think you need to decide for yourself where you want to put your money and your time. Because as a trainer and coach, when you go for a training, you pay the training and you do not get paid because you do not work at your client. So there is a double cost. So I'd say be very certain of the reason that brings you to follow a certain training.
Yeah.
Is there a market for that tool in your country? How beneficial is it? How much do you believe in it? All these questions, I think, are very important.
Yeah. And at some point, you need to switch from exploring and thinking into doing.
Yes. And again, the way I work is I cannot use a tool that I don't believe in.
Yeah. Okay. And to finalize our conversation now, let's say I got curious about MBTI and I want to take the first step. What is the first step?
You type MBTI for your country, you will have the list of trainings and you follow, you apply and you follow the training. I think it's very, very easy. The good thing also about MBTI is when you are certified, you can access their platform and you can ask also for their questionnaires in many, many different languages. So it's not because you followed MBTI in German that you cannot ask for questionnaires later in English, in French, in Spanish, depending on your clients. So I find them very dynamic. Now, I have not been paid by MBTI to give them any 5 stars or anything like that. But that's valid for all the tools. You need to know why you want to get certified to a certain tool. What makes sense to you? I think that's also very personal.
Yeah. Okay. And if I'm not yet certified and I first want to find my own profile and experience that from a client perspective, then I contact Helen, or what would be your advice here?
You can contact me or you can contact any MBTI certified coach. I think also on the website of MBTI, they have their certified coaches listed by country. But definitely this is something that you can, it's very easy to find someone who's MBTI certified. It should not be difficult to find someone who can help you out with this. By the way, there are plenty of other tools, or one of them that I really like, and I'm not fully certified, but it's on my list. It is the Strengths Finders from Gallup. So we'll go and have a look.
Yeah, I had an extensive look there. We are, in fact, building a tool that's going in that direction right now.
Nice.
So, yeah, okay. Thanks for this deep dive into MBTI, and for all the people who have now listened to your story and to this journey of making it as a coach. What would you say is the one thing that you would like to write on a screen and put it in front of their face?
Well, first of all, I think it is the most fantastic job that exists, because I am paid to meet new people every day and to generally doing my best to help them grow. So I think it's really a mission here. So it is a fantastic job. What I think also is it is a job that requires training and awareness ourselves, right? It is not like working in a shop where clients come in and out, and sometimes you can just, sit back in your counter and be maybe tired, upset, or whatsoever. That is not possible in our job. We need to take care of ourselves as well. It's important to have supervision. It's important to have serious training. You don't become a coach by 3 days online with some, God knows what kind of approach. I think it's very important. You cannot play with, life of others' lives and despair of others. So it is a great job, and it requires, the respect for the job as well and respect for others. So if you go for a coaching role, I think you need really to understand what makes you go there, right? And it needs to be well thought of. You need to know what kind of clients you want to attract, what kind of problematics you would like to solve. Where is your added value? Otherwise, it will not work, or it will not be sustainable. We need to do some research and some inner research as well before you start on this fantastic journey. That's what I would say.
Mhm. So a word of caution after hearing a lot about the Pippi Longstrump spirit that you also had for yourself. Cool.
You see, it's daring with also some reality check and asking yourself, okay, how is this working for me? Then taking also baby steps, discussing with people, having conversations, testing things out. I think it's very powerful as well.
Mhm. Cool. Thanks so much. This has been a pleasure. Also great to, I really love it that we ended up going so detailed into MBTI, which, as said, has also been one of the defining models for me, I think, in my personal development. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, most welcome, Matobi. Thank you so much for having invited me on this podcast.
This was my conversation with Hélène Feuillat. I found her Pippi Longstocking's mindset of I have never tried it, so I can do it quite inspiring to get some lightness into my first times. And many of these first times these days are related to this podcast for me. So if you enjoyed it, please leave a rating and share the link to this episode with a fellow coach or trainer. If you're curious to look up or get in touch with Hélène, go to helenefeuillat.com. In the show notes, you'll also find the link to the MBTI personality types model that we discussed. If you're looking for more tangible how-tos for your coaching conversations and workshops, I can also recommend the MetaFox Coaching Tools Handbook, our free and brand new ebook with plenty of practical methods for working with pictures, strengths, or values. That's it for today. On our next episode, we'll venture from the heart of Europe in Brussels, where we were today, to Asia and meet Nami, a Japanese coach who's currently living in Indonesia. Until then, try a few new things. All the best. Cheers.